Magus, Web Novel, Chapter 639, Teks Part 1. Soon fatigue trampled over the renewed enthusiasm from reaching their destination. The professors had come prepared. They had all the necessary to set up a few defensive arrays before going to sleep. I don't know how long we'll stay here, but we can't allow depression to dull our wits. Give me a few minutes, Professor Yandra said. After a while, the cave was lit by a sphere of light that resembled a small sun, positioned in the middle of the ceiling. The array provided both light and warmth, even giving the ceiling a blue color. A second array made the air fresher, ridding it of the excess humidity. Despite their simple effects, the two combined arrays made wonders to lift the morale of the expedition. The solar cycle array will reproduce the solar phases, including sunset. Yandra explained while checking her pocket watch. This way we can recover our normal sleep cycle and have an artificial night with an artificial moon that will provide us light. Marak had already sealed the path behind them, so Floria's soldiers could now guard the natural corridors without worrying that anyone could escape. Without Ranger Erie there was no way out and the cave offered no privacy. The group expanded the building Marak had previously created and split it into separate spaces for men and women. Once the camp was set, a hot meal consumed around a fire gave everyone the energy they needed to resume their task with optimism. Now the members of the expedition didn't feel lost anymore. They had a purpose, a roof, and light to guide their way. While Lith searched the stone door for a way in, he noticed that Floria and Kyla had joined the rest of the team. Both of them had what looked like a thin wand made of silver that resembled a conductor's baton. They would strike with it at any unusual rock or apparently out-of-place detail they found. Each time the wand hit, it would produce a ding, but nothing else. Since Forgemaster professors like Yandra had a similar tool, Lith felt compelled to ask. Kyla, what is that thing? A Royal Forgemaster tool. If you cast the proper incantation, it forces an enchanted item to reveal its nature. She explained. It can tell you what a spell does. Lith was as shocked as his voice sounded. No, silly, she laughed. It just reveals the magical nature of an otherwise seemingly normal item. Then it's up to the Forgemaster to study it. We're looking for some kind of enchanted secret compartment. Since when the two of you are Forgemasters? Lith asked. I started to practice it seriously after I killed Uriel. I spent the entire year I was cooped up home learning the basics. It helped me a lot to keep my head clear. Her voice was sad but firm. Kyla had come to terms with the actions the slave ring had forced her to commit, but that couldn't erase the guilt she felt for the death of one of her best friends. I, instead, started as soon as I finished my boot camp. Floria was eager to change the topic. She didn't want to let Kyla dwelling too long on such bad memories. I couldn't stand my men having poor equipment because there's never enough budget. Plus I always wanted to follow my father's footsteps. Once I got rid of grades, I could finally take my time and learn things at my own pace. Why have I never heard of such a tool? Lith was kind of envious. He didn't need it, but it would have made it much easier for him to justify his findings with life vision. Also, if he had Orion's teachings and resources, the sky would be the only limit for his true forge mastery. You can always dump Camila and marry Floria, if she's okay with it. Solus sneered. Sorry, you were right. I should stop thinking with my wallet, Lith replied. Because it's a secret of the trade, Yandra said. Only royal forgemasters know how to craft one and only they can entrust one to someone else. Doing that puts in danger their own title and status. It's part of the legacy of Valeron Griffin, the first king. Are you perchance interested in my offer now? Lith was about to give her a polite but firm hard pass when his nose caught an unfamiliar scent. Now that the air was clear, his perceptions were back to their full efficiency. What's that noise? Marak said, putting everyone on the alert. How the heck did he hear something above our voices? Lith thought while running toward the entrance and activating life vision. The previously empty tunnels were now filled with unknown creatures. They triggered all the alarms the two rangers had set along the way before finally coming into the light. It was a group of magical beasts with the appearance of humanoid crabs, who stood over 2 meters, 6 feet 7 inches, tall. There was no head above their shoulders, just a pair of stalks ending with eyes that moved independently, allowing them to have a 360-degree sight. Their bodies were covered with a thick and pale white chitinous exoskeleton that made them look like stone colossuses come to life. They had huge pincers instead of hands, big enough that they could easily chop a bull's head off. They had no equipment, but between their bulky size and their bright green monocores, Lith could tell that they probably didn't need it. The soldiers stuck at the creatures with their blades, but they were easily repelled by the exoskeletons without leaving a scratch. Then, the soldiers activated the spells imbued in their magical rings, unleashing lightning bolts against the magical beasts while seeking the protection of the array. The electricity slipped over the humanoid crabs like rain on a window, inflicting no damage. Using fire magic was too risky inside caves. The air was thin and the only fresh oxygen was that provided by the ever-present moss. Fire might make the cave inhabitable or destroy the moss needed for the group's survival. Hence the well-trained soldiers used earth magic to conjure a barrage of earth spikes to crush open the exoskeletons or at least pin the creatures against the walls long enough for the professors to prepare a powerful spell that would finish them in one fell swoop. Unfortunately, the creatures only needed a wave of their pincer hands to overpower the control of the soldiers over the spikes and threw them against the barrier. The crab beings were smart enough to aim for someone who wasn't the one who had cast the spell, so that they could actually hurt them. Don't waste your spells. Dinner here is called talk. Their only weak points are the joints and the eyes, Marak said. One of his twin short swords pierced into the midriff of the Tok in front of him, hitting its white cartilage with surgical precision despite it being almost indistinguishable from the same colored exoskeleton. The creature tried to crush the ranger with its pincers, but Marok stepped back, taking out the blade from the open wound as a trickle of blue blood came out of it. He also hit the creature with a palm strike, apparently using the momentum of the hit to propel himself backward faster. Right after the dodge, a thud could be heard and smoke came out of all the joints of the Tek as it collapsed to the ground, making them visible. Supreme Magus, Web Novel, Chapter 640, Teks Part 2. Marok had actually cast a fireball right through the open wound and into the innards of the creature, using its own hard shell to trap the powerful explosion inside the beast. I like my crab well cooked and now you know where to hit. Time to earn your pay, boys, he said with a feral smile before moving on to the next opponent. Lith's blade, one of the failed prototypes, went for the eyes instead. He wanted to check why Marok had chosen such a dangerous strategy when there was a much easier target. The answer came in the form of the eye stalks actually being articulated peduncles capable of being folded back into the shell in case of danger. Plan B it is, Lith thought, putting the blade back inside his pocket dimension. Fusion magic empowered his body as Solus turned into her glove form, fully enveloped by the silver protection of the orichalcum. The fist struck the Tek's abdomen like a jackhammer, lifting the creature off the ground of a few centimeters as cracks spread over its armor. The waves of pain the hit caused made the eyes reflexively pop out, allowing Lith to grab them with his free hand and discharge lightning directly into them. The electricity traveled straight into the brain of the Tek, killing it on the spot. A second creature, incredibly nimble despite its size, circled around its dead companion and released a hail of razor-sharp ice crystals. Water fusion is a game two can play, Lith thought. Now that he knew the two elements Tek could use, he could predict their basic strategy. Lith sidestepped the attack, letting it harmlessly strike the barrier as a palm strike injected a volley of plague arrows inside the enemy. Seeing that Lith had killed two enemies in the same time he had needed to kill one, Marok clicked his tongue. Fine, let's get serious. Pick hammer, Marok said, sheathing and unsheathing his blades in the blink of an eye. The weapon's shape shifted into one-handed battle hammers that closely resembled Solus's forge-mastering hammer, having both a hammerhead and a pick. Marok struck with the pick side of the weapon at the carapace of the closest Tek, but to no avail. His strength wasn't enough to pierce its rock-hard shell, at least not until a second later, when the second hammer hit the head of the first one as if it was a nail. The pick crushed both the exoskeleton and the heart of the creature, instantly killing it. The soldiers and the professors were so shocked by the display of raw power in front of their eyes that they stared dumbly at the scene, incapable of moving a muscle. The Teks started to coordinate their moves, attacking in waves and dying in waves. Marok would crush between his hammers any pincer that came too close for comfort, whereas Lith used water fusion to be as nimble as the Teks and air fusion to be faster than them. Every one of his palm strikes would send one of the creatures flying against its comrades, spreading his deadly touch to all of them since Plague Arrow's ethereal nature would pierce through any kind of matter until all of its energy was exhausted. Good gods, Jirth said. She was the second most powerful mage in her unit after Floria. I thought they were just tall, dark, and rudesome, but those two are not human. Are all rangers like that, Captain? No, there is a reason why unlike the academies the army ranks monster cadets above the special ones. Floria replied, snapping out of her reverie. Which one did you date? The less rude one. Now stop flapping your gums and drink your potions, they need backup. She was right. The first group was already dead, but a much larger one was flooding out of all tunnels. Are we really going to stand here like morons? Professor Syndra from the Lightning Griffin yelled. Captain, buy me 5 seconds and I'll close the curtains on this madness. Floria nodded and started yelling orders. Stall them with hit and run tactics, there's weakness in numbers. Darkness magic may be slow, but there's too many of them. If you shoot in the middle, you are bound to hit some of them. What can I do? Kyla asked. Stay behind me and get ready to treat the wounded. The Teks were too many, forcing the two rangers on the defensive, back to back to avoid being surrounded. Nice glove, Marok said. Nice weapons, also, duck, Lith replied while clapping his hands and emitting a silvery sound due to the orichalcum covering them. What duck? Oh shit, Marok kneeled just in time as Lith's hands released a ring of darkness energy that expanded outwards, mowing through the horde around them. The spell wasn't strong enough to kill so many Teks, but it temporarily weakened them. It allowed the two rangers to escape the encirclement and find shelter inside the array. Floria's soldiers were shooting darkness magic non-stop, killing dozens of enemies at once while she unleashed her Tier 5 Mage Knight spell, Boombox. All the spells in a Mage Knight's grimoire could be cast with only one hand, making their casting speed exceptionally fast. Their greatest downside was their very short range, but against so many enemies amassed in the little space between the tunnels and the barrier, there was no such problem. 5 square-shaped ice shields with a side length of 7 meters, 23 feet, surrounded the Teks from all directions but below, trapping them. Before the creatures could smash through the ice, a sphere of wind exploded in the middle of the spell. The thunderclap was followed by a shockwave that rebounded on the ice walls after being amplified by a resonance effect. The shockwaves grew in power every time they hit an ice wall, piercing through all the prisoners after each sonic speed rebound. The Teks crumbled like sand castles facing a high tide, but more of them came out of the tunnels. Everyone, step back, Professor Syndra said. He lifted both his arms, conjuring a tidal wave out of thin air that crashed against the Teks both inside the cave and those still inside the tunnels. No offense, Gramps, but all that water will just make much easier for them destroying the array with enough ice to make winter look like summer. Marok said. Professor Syndra's lips curled up in a disgusted expression. It was hard to tell if he was more insulted or annoyed by the ranger's obvious remark. Once you're old, you need to eat a lot of fish. It's good for your memory. Corona discharge, Syndra said with a flat tone. The mother of all lightning bolts erupted from his body, in the wake of the tidal wave. Corona discharge was a tier 5 war mage spell. It used water to soak the opponent so that the following bolt of lightning could bypass all protections and hit the weak spots of an enemy. In the Teks case, their eyes. Like all tier 5 spells, both the water and the lightning were guided by Syndra's will, making them impossible to escape from. Over 50 Teks died in an instant, their bodies emitting the characteristic aroma of stewed lobster. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Lith asked. Yes, I call dibs on the well-cooked ones. I know we just ate, but all this action made me work an appetite.